Hey everyone, Todd from Sideshow Effects once again, and in this video I'm going to go through the installation and a quick navigation for our Capture One Pro profiles for the Stream Deck Plus device. Now I'm going to be demonstrating it on the Mac system. Most of these processes are identical on the Windows system, so you can follow along. Now in this video we're going to go through the installation steps. There is some setup that is required in order for the profile to be completely operational, so we'll go through that in detail. But I will say that there is a PDF guide in the download, and it is usually best to follow the PDF guide closely as it gives all the step-by-step instructions, and if you need additional information, this video can help you out with that. But the PDF guide will always have the most updated information, so you should refer to that first. So I'm going to go through the installation process, and then we're going to touch lightly on some of the profiles in here, but placing more emphasis on the adjustment section and detail how we can use all the different adjustment parameters with our Stream Deck Plus device. So once you've downloaded the product, this is what you're going to see. The first thing we need to do is, because we have pre-built profiles in here, we've programmed our own keys, we want to install the keyboard shortcut file that we have created for this pack. Now you see we have a keyboard shortcuts folder in here and it's divided in between Mac and Windows. Let's just do the Mac first here. You can see the Sideshow Effects Pro Mac plist file. This goes in a specific location. So it's going to go into, and I'll widen this out here so you can see what the path is. So it's going to go on your computer, users, your username, library, application support, Capture One, and in Capture One folder there should be a keyboard shortcuts folder. If there isn't, you can create a new folder and title it exactly as you see here, keyboard shortcuts. So this is where you will drag this plist file directly into the keyboard shortcuts folder. You can see that I already have mine here. Now on the Windows system, the same applies, except the path will be users, your name, app data, local, Capture One, and custom commands. And you will drag the Sideshow Effects win.xml file into that custom commands folder. If you don't have the custom commands folder, you can create a new folder and name it exactly as you see here, custom commands. So with your keyboard shortcuts installed in the appropriate location, we're going to go to Capture One, and we'll go into Edit, Edit Keyboard Shortcuts, and in this window you can see a drop-down box, and we are going to select the file we just loaded in. Sideshow Effects Pro Mac is the file, or it will be Sideshow Effects Pro Win if you're on the Windows system. And if you don't see it listed here, it might be because you need to restart Capture One in order for it to appear in this list. Now the next thing to do is we have our Mouse Move plugin that we've developed that needs to be installed. With your Stream Deck software open, you can double click this file and it will self-install itself into your Stream Deck software. And the next thing to do is install the profiles themselves. Now you'll note that we have a Mac and a Windows folder here, and each one has 7 profiles. This is how we design all of our Stream Deck Plus packs. We have multiple profiles and we link them all together. So the installation on the Mac, it's pretty easy. What we can do is we can shift click, so we select all 7 here, and we can then just double click so that they will all install together into our Stream Deck software. Just keep in mind that if you have more than one device, you want to make sure that you got your Stream Deck Plus device selected up here instead of, say, your XL or your 15 key or MK. Now the Windows tends not to work as well doing it that way. You may need to double click each one of these individually with your Stream Deck software open in order to install them. And on very rare occasions that doesn't even work on the Windows system, in which you would instead click the gear icon, go into your profiles. On the downward menu here, you would then select import, and you would select each of these to import. Now with those installed, we'll go into the preferences here, we're going to go through and select our main. This is our main profile, and we want to associate it with the Capture One application. So you click here in Application and select Capture One. What this means is when you bring Capture One to the forefront or you open Capture One, the main profile will appear on your device. So let's switch over to the main right now. Now, as I mentioned, we have 7 profiles that we imported. We have these 6 plus the main profile. So each one of these keys is a switch profile key, meaning that when you press this button on your device, it will open a different profile. Now, unfortunately, Stream Deck does not retain the links that we set for it when we ship them out, so you need to relink these. Process is very simple. Click on that particular key, go to Profile down here, and you will select, in this case, it's the file profile. So we'll then move down to File, select that, and so now when I go to my device and press File, it will open my file profile for me. Now you'll see that there's a main key, and this is also a switch profile key, and its function when pressed will take us back to the main profile. So under profile, we need to make sure this takes us back to main. Then when we go to our profile, select the main, and we're back to our main profile. Now we want to do each one of these very quickly. Image goes to image, and the main will go back to main. Adjust defaults to adjust here because it was the first one in the list, so that's correct. And then selecting this to go back to main. Camera, we'll go to the camera profile, and main, of course, back to main. Layer goes to the layer profile, and of course main once again, and then the tools, of course, goes to the tools profile. And the last one goes back to main. And there you have successfully linked all the profiles to each other. Now there's a little more setup to do. A lot of what we've got in these profiles works out of the box, but there are some keys that do not. Some keys in Capture One are not permitted to have keyboard shortcuts associated with them, but we still wanted to control them. So with our plugin, we're able to do just that. Now before we go ahead and start assigning coordinates, and how we do that is we assign screen coordinates for our particular setup. And I'll show you what I mean. Let's go into Capture One here. You can see I've got a quick little setup here under my Adjust panel. If I twirl down Color Editor, and I'll open up an image here, you can see we can select different color swatches and affect different parts of our different color parts of our image with the hue, saturation, and lightness here. Well, these keys are not able to be assigned via shortcuts. So this is an example of something that we need to assign so that we can, at the press of a button, select these items. So we're going to get into how to program those specific parameter controls for the color editor, but I just want to demonstrate what the process is and why you're doing it. So, for example, if I want to, at the press of a button, select red as the color range that I am going to adjust hue and saturation and lightness, with this particular panel, I want to make sure that my mouse will always go to this exact location on my screen. So if I set an XY coordinate and record that coordinate for this particular location, I will always have to have my color editor open, and this red swatch should always appear in this location. If I, at some point, close my histogram, I had recorded that red swatch somewhere down here. because histogram closed, everything moved up, and my coordinate will be misaligned. Now I'm mentioning this only because before you start any of your recording process that we're just going to go through, you want to set up your interface first, and then you're going to leave it in this position. Otherwise, some of these functions will be misaligned from when you recorded them. If you change your mind on your interface later, you can always re-record your coordinates. The elements that we want to make sure move the least for us is color editor, black and white, color balance, and levels. High dynamic range on Mac does not need to be present, but it does on Windows. The keyboard shortcut for these are available on a Mac. They are not available on a Windows. So on Windows, we will have to assign these ourselves. Okay, so let's go get into the assignments. So we're going to start off in our adjust profile. So on our device, let's go into adjust. And you can see the first page here that we have 4 dials, and we have several functions per dial that we can adjust. Now on this first page, it works out of the box. You don't need to record any positions. They're already pre-programmed. And I'll demonstrate quickly how this works. You can see on dial 1, we have 4 parameters that we can control with this one dial. And we can choose between them by pressing that icon on the dial screen. And you'll know which one is active by the green triangle. Currently, right now, it's showing that contrast is selected. So if I rotate dial 1, I'll be changing contrast on this image. And you can see we get the readout at the bottom, as well as we can see the visual change in our image, and of course the histogram updates. Now if I want to choose exposure instead, I click on that part of the dial screen and adjust dial 1. If I want the brightness or the saturation, those are all controllable by dial 1. And what about dial 2? Dial 2 also has 4 parameters of which we can control. Currently, black is selected. So by rotating the dial, I can do black, I can do white, I can do the highlights and the shadows. Now you see on dial 3, we only have 3 items that are selected to be used with dial 3. The RGB shadow, RGB midtones, and the highlights. And once again, on dial 4, we have 4 items that are available. We can adjust Kelvin to change our color temperature, the tint, vignette, and of course our sharpen. So we're able to adjust all these parameters without any change in our interface, and we don't have to worry about where items are on our interface. They will work out of the box. And of course the keys on our dial 1, they allow us some auto adjustments, so we can do an auto white balance, auto exposure, etc. Now if we swipe the dial screen to the left to get to page 2, we see we have a whole new array of colors here. Now this page is dedicated to the color balance controls. Now the controls in the dials, they work out of the box as well. So if we want to do a master saturation, I would click that and I can adjust my master saturation and my master hue. And even though I'm able to change them, I don't need the color balance panel open to make those changes. But it's always nice to be able to view and see how the interface is changing. Gives us a little bit more feedback on what it is we're doing instead of just the image itself or just the histogram. So the keys above here, you can see we've got an empty adjustment layer, so we can, that's always a handy key to have. If we're working with layers, we can just quickly create an empty adjustment layer and make our adjustments. Now the second one over is listed as color balance. This is a key that you will need to assign. The idea behind this key is when you press this button, it will open up our color balance panel. So now how we do this is we're going to take our cursor and we're going to put it over top of the arrow beside the color balance text. And on our device, we're going to press and hold that color balance key for about a second until we see a check mark. There you see a check mark indicating that that position has been recorded on our screen. Now when I press this button, it will open that color balance panel for us. But you see we have other keys here that we can access as well. We've got a reset key right beside it. So we're going to do the same procedure. We're going to take our mouse over top of the reset icon here, press and hold this key until you see the check mark. Now you've recorded that position. Same thing with the master. Three-way. And mouse over shadow, mouse over midtone, and highlight. Now if I want to see the changes that I'm making in the master controls, as I was just using dial 1 for, I can click on master. That will open that for me, and now when I adjust the hue, you can see I can see the interface reacting, and then I can go over to master saturation, increase my saturation, increase the hue. Now you notice there is a third control here. This is only available on the Mac system. This allows us to access the different presets that come shipped with Capture One for the color balance panel. Now on this one, we will need to record this position. So what we're going to do is select presets first. You may see your cursor jump, you might not. But then we're going to take our cursor and place it right over that presets icon. We're going to push in dial 1 and hold it until you see on the dial screen it will say location saved. It has now saved that location, so my mouse can be somewhere else, and now I can press on presets. It will open up the preset list, and I can use the dial to choose one of these preset settings, and then pressing in the dial quickly will apply that setting. If we want to reset, of course, we can just go up here and press reset, and that resets our image for the color balance. Now in the same way, if we want to work with shadows, we can go over here, press on shadows, and we can adjust our shadow saturation, for example. I can press on the dial 3 here, the shadow hue. So I can adjust these two at the same time to dial in what I want. And then we have shadow lightness here. I can adjust the lightness while I adjust the saturation or the hue and the lightness at the same time. And of course you can do the same thing with midtones. We can go over to the midtones, press my midtone controls for each of the 3 dials here, and then I can make my adjustment as I need. Now you don't need to have this panel open to be able to make these color controls. I could be on highlights, but still making my adjustments for midtones, and you'll see the image and the histogram will update, but you of course are not going to see it on the interface unless I switch over to midtones, and then you can see what changes I'm making. Alright, and now let's swing over to the next page, and this is dedicated for levels. Now we're going to want to close this up because, as you can see, levels is below color balance. So by opening and closing this, obviously the location of levels moves up quite a bit. So let's leave it in this location here. We're going to assign the levels key to this location. Press and hold. So now we can open that up. And we can do the same thing with our reset. And our RGB red, green, and blue headings. There's RGB, red, green, and blue. Now if I want to see a particular channel, I can go there. And our dials here, the dials 2, 3, and 4 all work out of the box. So I can make my adjustments for red here. And I can also do green. I can adjust the green without green being visible, but I can press the button to see my green changes in the levels. And same thing with blue. But you notice the first dial is specified for our target low and high, and that is these two boxes here. We have to assign these. They are not controllable through Capture One software. So with our mouse over top of the target low value box, let's make sure that we're on target low. It is highlighted. We're going to press in and hold the dial. That's saved. Let's now select target high, move our cursor over to this location, press and hold, and now I can make those adjustments, and these will work in any of the color modes. Alright, swiping to the next page. This is dedicated for Color Editor. So let's close up Levels. We're going to place our cursor to the arrow on Color Editor. And in this case, it will be opened with Dial 1's dial screen. So with my mouse in that position, I'm going to press and hold in Dial 1. It will save that location. Now if I want to open Color Editor, I just tap on the screen and it will open. Now we have the 8 color swatch keys up top here. We want to specify the XY coordinates of each of these. So let's mouse over the red swatch. But we have to assign the hue, saturation, and lightness value boxes in much the same way as you've seen before. So we're going to mouse over the value box of hue and dial number 2. We're going to press and hold. Saturation, mouse over that value box, press and hold dial 3. And lightness, press and hold dial 4. Now, since I'm in the orange spectrum, by adjusting hue, I can change the hue of the orange values in this image. I can change its saturation, drop it out, change its lightness. Now let's move to the next page. We're going to get into black and white. Let's close down Color Editor. We're going to mouse over the arrow for black and white, and we're going to press and hold the black and white key. And now we can press that to open up black and white. Let's do the reset. We're going to do color sensitivity. So just on the text of that, just on the text of split tones, and the enable black and white checkbox. So let's click on color sensitivity. Let's click on enable black and white. Now we do need to record the XY coordinates of each one of these 6 color value boxes. So first things first, on dial 1 you can see that we have 3 controls that we can control with it. The black and white, red, yellow, and green. And in the second dial we can adjust the cyan, blue, and magenta. So with the first dial, let's select red first. We'll take our mouse over the value box of red, press and hold in our dial. Now we can select yellow, move down to the yellow value box, press and hold. And we'll select green, value over green, press and hold. And now we'll go to dial 2. You can see it's already on cyan, so we'll move down to the cyan value box, press and hold. And select blue. Press magenta. Now I can click any one of these and start adjusting that value. Now we can also do the split tones. So by pressing on split tones, that opens up that part of the panel. And if you're on a Windows system, this will look a little bit different to you. You will have the split tones, you will have 2 split tones on dial 3 and 2 split tones on dial 4, because the preset control is not available on the Windows system, but the process is still the same. So we're going to move the mouse over our split tones hue and make sure that hue is selected here. Sometimes it's better to select it first on the device and then move your mouse into position. As you see here, it did move it off. So this is because at factory we do sometimes have our XY coordinates still baked in. So when you press the button, it's going to move to our factory coordinates. So it's probably the best practice to select it on the device first and then move your cursor to where you need it to be. In this case, it's a split tone for highlights hue. We're going to press and hold this in and then press on saturation. Move to the saturation dialog. Press and hold. Now we'll go to our shadow hue. On the Windows system, this will be on your 4th dial. So move to the shadow hue, press and hold the 3rd dial. On Windows it would be the 4th dial. Then our shadow saturation. Let's press and hold dial 3 or dial 4 on Windows. That has now been saved. Now by adjusting the corresponding dial, we're able to make these adjustments. Now if you're on a Mac, we do have presets here that we can access. We're going to take our mouse, position it over our presets icon, and we're going to press and hold the 4th dial until that's saved. Now if we want to, if we're working with our image and we want to access the presets, tap on the presets screen and then use the dial to access which preset you want to work with. Pressing in the dial quickly enters that value. And we can always reset the black and white for this image. Scrolling along to our last page here in adjustments. Now the noise reduction, the keystone, and the film grain can all be adjusted without the panels being opened, and you don't need to assign anything on this page unless you're on the Windows system. If you're on the Windows system, the HDR panel will need to be visible and you will need to assign these coordinates. The HDR controls on the Windows system are not able to receive shortcut commands, but they are on a Mac. So that's why we have to apply them manually on the Windows system. However, if you want to see the interface update as you work with it, you can assign the panel coordinates for the bottom row of buttons here. So let's close black and white. And let's go down to noise reduction. Now if you don't have noise reduction listed here, you can quickly just right click, go add tool, and just select it from this lengthy list. So I have it here, and if I want to move it into a position that I want to keep it at, let's just move it to the top here, and then I'm going to want to make sure that I keep it in this location. If I move it, the coordinates I'm saving right now will change. So let's go to noise reduction, go to the arrow, press and hold on the key, and now by pressing that we'll open up our panel. Now if we go to dial 1 here and we select noise reduction luma and start adjusting, you can see that we can adjust this, noise reduction color, etc. But this panel doesn't need to be open to make these adjustments. These adjustments will still take place without that panel being open. Now the same thing is true of keystone. Let's close noise reduction. We're going to go into keystone here. It's down here at the bottom. I'm going to move this up. Place my mouse over the arrow for keystone. Press and hold on the keystone key. Now I can open that up. And you can see I have key aspect is already highlighted, so I can just start controlling and adjusting my aspect. I can adjust the horizontal and the vertical. Now we have the keystone itself here. That is over in the guide section. So you can see I can adjust the entire keystone here. Let's close keystone. We're going to go to film grain. We'll move this up as well. I don't want to put it above keystone because I just set the positioning for keystone. So move it underneath so keystone doesn't move in its location. Let's keep our mouse over the arrow, film grain, press and hold. And now we can press it to open. Let's select our impact. We can increase the impact. Now in order to get granularity, we need to select a different type here. Now with granularity open, we can click on that and make its adjustment as well. All right, and then we have HDR, which you can see I've got here. So let's just mouse over that part and click and hold. And now we can open HDR up. Once again, on the Mac system, you don't need HDR open in order to make these adjustments. These work right out of the box. You can just start making whatever adjustments you need. But if you're on the Windows system, you do need to go through and, in this case, select the highlight first, move your mouse to the correct value box, highlight value box, and you would press and hold in that fourth key until you see location saved, and you go through and do it for highlight, shadow, white, and black. And that's it. That's the adjustment profile. And that's probably where you're going to spend most of your time in this pack. You'll see that if we go over to File here, we have on the dial strip the same layout as you saw on the first page of our adjustment. These all do the same thing. Or we can make adjustment with our exposure, brightness, and saturation, increase the saturation, jump down to making some shadow adjustments. So it works the same way. Swiping to the next page, you can see those same dial strip functions are repeated. And same thing with page 3, and then back to page 1. And we can go back to main. Now on image, you can see once again we have that same core controls on our dial strip. Swiping to page 2, we see something different. So we have an undo and redo, kind of like a history dial, so we can go through all of our different changes. We can get into layers if I want to move my layers. Let's just say we have an extra layer here. Make a couple extra. I can change the layer order between the two of them. The 3 as well, the background. I can change the layer opacity. And in here we can also zoom in our image. On the third page, we can go to our previous or next image. Layer order and layer opacity are also here. And we can go to our previous and next set on the fourth page. And these remain consistent through the rest of this profile. If we swing over into camera, this allows us to control our camera for live capturing. With the camera connected, we can control shutter, aperture, the ISO, and the exposure bias. Going into layers allow us to work with our independent layers. You can see we have layer order and opacity. We have our undo and redo and zoom here again. But we also have access to some brush controls. So with the brush tool selected, we can change the brush size, the hardness, the opacity with which our brush is applied, and as well as our brush flow. And then finally we have tools. Once again, the familiar core control layout, and that's on both pages of our tools. profile. So that's it. That's the Capture One for Stream Deck Plus devices all rolled in. Hopefully this is going to help speed up your image correction and manipulation, make things quicker for you, free up more time for creativity and worrying about your image more than where your shortcuts are. As always, thanks very much for watching, and we'll talk to you soon.